He counted the shots out loud. 163. Rashid Barakat walked into the open courtyard where 6 American rifles were pointed at him, spread his arms and turned in a slow circle so every scope on that ridge could watch him breathe. Then he grabbed Daniel Whitmore by the hair, hauled his head back, and opened his cheek with the knife slow so the camera could focus and let the blood run into the man's collar while he laughed into the lens. 15 snipers, he said. 2.5 miles, send more paper. 4,200 yards away, a woman nobody had ever asked to shoot picked up a rifle. Before we go on, please subscribe to the channel and stay with this story to the end. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The video came through the secure link at 0412 local time, and by 0417, every man inside the operations tent at Firebase Ironwood had watched it 3 times. Nobody said anything for a while. That was the strange part. 15 of the most decorated long-range shooters in the United States Navy men who had spent their adult lives learning how to stay calm while other people fell apart, and not one of them could find a word. Then Master Chief Ray Duvall broke it. Play it again. Master Chief, we've seen it. Play it again. I want to hear the last part. The screen lit up again. Barakat leaned in close to the hostage, and there it was, that whisper, 3 or 4 syllables swallowed by the wind. He's not talking to Whitmore, Duvall said. Look at his eyes. He's talking to us. He knows we're watching. He knows we're close. Lieutenant Commander Aaron Vance stood at the back of the tent with his arms folded and his jaw locked so tight the muscle jumped. Whitmore, Daniel Whitmore, 41 years old, 2 daughters, an intelligence officer who had been on the ground 11 days and who was supposed to be on a bird home in 72 hours. Vance had signed the paperwork himself. He had shaken the man's hand and told him to bring back something useful. Where is he holding him? Vance asked. Ridge compound. Grids confirmed. 2 structures, mud walls, courtyard in the middle. He's not moving him. Why isn't he moving him? Because he doesn't have to, Duvall said quietly. Sir, take a look at the terrain. They pulled the imagery. Vance leaned over the table and felt something cold slide down the back of his neck. The compound sat on a shelf of rock on the far side of a valley, so open, so completely bare, that a mouse crossing it would have thrown a shadow. There was no approach, no dead ground, no wadi, no tree line, no fold in the earth to crawl through. A ground assault would be visible from the moment it stepped off, and Barakat had eyes on every ridgeline for 2 miles. And the only place on the American side of the valley with a clean sight line to that courtyard was a rock spur behind the outpost. Duvall put the laser rangefinder on it twice because the first number was so ugly he didn't believe it. 4,211 yards. Somebody in the back of the tent laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was the sound a man makes when his brain refuses to accept what it just heard. That's not a shot, Petty Officer Cole Iverson said. Sir, respectfully, that's not a shot. That's a prayer. That's 2.4 miles, said another voice. I know what it is, Vance said. The bullet's in the air for over 6 seconds. I know. Sir, in 6 seconds, the wind at the target can completely reverse. We'd be shooting at a place he used to be in air that used to exist. I know what I'm asking, Vance said, and his voice cracked on the last word, and every man in that tent heard it and pretended they didn't. Duvall straightened up slowly. He was 51 years old. He had made a confirmed kill at 1,900 yards in Iraq and had never once bragged about it, and he was the only man in the tent who had not said a single word about how impossible this was, because he was the only man in the tent who was already doing the math. We'll try, he said. Master Chief, we'll try, sir. That's a man out there, so we'll try. By 0600, they had 6 rifles on the spur. By 900, they had fired 41 rounds. Every single one of them missed. The thing nobody tells you about a miss at that distance is that you don't even get to know how badly you missed. The bullet goes out and simply ceases to exist. There's no splash, no dust, no signature, nothing. The spotter stares through the glass and sees the same courtyard he saw before, unchanged, and the only thing he can report is a word that starts to taste like poison after the 10th time. No impact. Say again. No impact. Cole, nothing. I got nothing. That's not possible. I was dead on. I'm telling you what I see. Spot me again. Cole, spot me again. And then at 0847, they got something worse than nothing. Barakat walked out into the courtyard. He walked out slowly, deliberately, hands empty, and he stood in the exact center of that open space, and he turned in a full circle with his arms spread wide. Duval watched it through the scope and felt his stomach drop through the floor of the world. He's counting, Duval said. He's what? He's counting our shots. He knows exactly how many we've fired, and he knows every one missed. He's standing in the open because he's telling us he knows. Iverson's hands were shaking on the rifle, actually shaking, and Cole Iverson was a man who had once dislocated his shoulder on a fast rope and reported it as a scratch. Give me the wind, he said. Cole, give me the wind, Ray. Full value left to right at the spur 12. Mid-valley, I've got trees moving the other direction. At the target, the smoke from his cook fire is going straight up. Straight up, Cole. That's 3 different wind conditions in one bullet flight. So give me an average. There is no average, Duval said. That's the whole problem. You can't average a thing that's fighting itself. Iverson fired anyway. No impact. He fired again. No impact. He fired a third time and the round went so wide that a spotter on the flank saw the dust bloom 70 meters short in a full football field to the right. And the strange, sick thing about that was that it was the best data they'd gotten all morning because at least it was data. 70 short, 90 right, the flank called. That's not possible, Iverson said. That's what I saw. That is not possible. My dope says I'm on. My solution says I'm dead center. 90 right at this range with a 12-mile crosswind, I should be pushing left if anything. 90 right is backwards. That's the wrong direction. Nobody answered him, and on the rock behind them, unnoticed, a 24-year-old support specialist named Emily Carter closed her eyes for 1 second and said very quietly to nobody at all, "It's not backwards." They rotated shooters every 90 minutes. That was Vance's call, and it was a good one because a man who has missed 11 times in a row stops shooting a rifle and starts arguing with it. So they cycled them. Iverson came off. Ramirez went on. Ramirez came off. Petrov went on. Petrov came off and sat down on a rock and put his hands over his face and stayed like that for 4 straight minutes while nobody looked at him. By noon, they had gone through all 15 shooters. By noon, they had fired 163 rounds. They had not touched him. Emily Carter had been on that spur since 0530, and she had not fired a single shot because nobody had asked her to, and nobody was going to. Her job was the rifles. She cleaned them. She torqued the action screws. She checked the scope bases, logged the round counts, kept the bolts running smooth in dust that got into everything like it had a grudge. She had carried water up that rock 9 times. She had carried batteries. She had carried a spare bipod for a man who never said thank you and never learned her first name. She had also at 0640 written something on the back of her hand in pen and stared at it for a long time. At 12:10, when Duval came down off the glass to drink something, she stepped in front of him. "Master Chief?" "Not now, Carter." "Master Chief, it's about the ammunition." "Carter, I've got a man with 4 hours to live." "That's why I'm talking about the ammunition." He stopped. He looked at her. She was 5'5", and she was carrying somebody else's rifle case, and her hands were black with carbon up to the wrist, and she was looking at him the way a person looks at you when they've decided they don't care what happens to them next. "Say it fast," he said. "The lot number's wrong." "The what?" "The ammunition. The match grade we're shooting, lot 417. The dope cards everybody on this rock is using were built on lot 392. They're different lots, Master Chief. Different powder batch." Duval stared at her. "That's a 15-foot per second delta at most," he said. 31, she said. "I chronographed it." "You what?" "I chronographed it. 9 weeks ago at Bagram when the pallet came in. 31 feet per second slow, and the extreme spread is almost 3 times what it should be. I wrote it up. I filed it. It went to supply. 31 feet per second is nothing. At 1,000 yards, it's nothing, Emily said. Tell you. At 4,231 feet per second is 11 feet of drop. And that's before you get to the spread, which means every round in that case is a different rifle. Duval didn't move. And that's not even the part that matters, she said. What's the part that matters? Iverson went 90 right. So, so everybody up here thinks that was a bad call from the spotter. It wasn't. It was the only true thing that's happened all morning. She pointed across the valley with her chin, not her hand, because she had learned a long time ago from an old man in Montana that you never point at something you're about to talk about. There's a thermal running up that rock face. The sun's been on it since 0700. Dark rock, no vegetation. That column of air is rising, and it is bending everything that comes through it. Every solution on this ridge is treating that last 800 yards like flat air. It isn't flat. It's a river, and we've been shooting people upstream of it all morning. The wind moved over to the rock and made a sound like somebody breathing. Who told you that? Duval asked. Nobody told me that. Then how do you know it? Because I've been watching it for 6 hours, she said, because nobody gave me anything else to do. At 12:40, Cole Iverson found out that the armorer had been talking to the Master Chief, and he came across that spur-like weather. You, he said, petty officer, you told him my dope was wrong. I told him the lot number was wrong. You've never fired a shot past 400 yards in your life. That's true, Emily said. I've never fired one here. Something in the way she said it made him stop. Just for a second. Then he came the rest of the way in, and his voice dropped to something low and mean and honest. There is a man out there, he said, with a knife at his throat, and you are up here playing armorer detective because you want somebody to notice you. That is what this is. Isn't it? 8 months of carrying batteries and you finally found a moment. Emily didn't flinch. Petty officer, what's your muzzle velocity? 2960. When did you last verify it? It's on the card. That's not what I asked. When did you last verify it? Silence. You verified it at Coronado, she said. At sea level, 72 degrees, 60% humidity. We are at 7,000 feet in air so dry it's cracking your lips open, and your barrel has fired 411 rounds since that card was made. I know that because I logged every one of them, every single one, petty officer, in a notebook that nobody has ever asked to see. Iverson's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Your card is a beautiful piece of paper, Emily said. It's just describing a different rifle on a different day in a different world. Get her off my rock, Iverson said. Cole, Duval said. Master Chief, get her off my rock. Cole, sit down. She's a mechanic. So was I, Duval said. Sit down. At 1400, they got the second video. Barakat had cut Whitmore's cheek open. Not deep, not enough to kill, just enough that the blood ran down into his collar and pooled there, and Barakat held the camera close so the lens could get it in focus, and he said, 93. That was all, just the number. 93. What's 93, Ramirez said. Duval put his head down on the back of his hands. It's a countdown. It's not a countdown, Duval said into his hands. Then what is it? He's telling us how many shots he heard hit the hillside under him. The tent 400 meters below went completely silent through the radio. He's been marking them, Duval said. Every impact. He's been keeping score. He knows we can't reach him, and he wanted us to know that he knows. And that was when Aaron Vance, who had a wife in Virginia Beach and who had not slept in 31 hours, said the sentence that ended the argument. Then we go on foot. Sir, we go on foot, across the valley, now. Sir, that's 400 meters of open ground under observation with a machine gun on the north wall. We will lose the whole element. Then we lose the whole element, Vance said, because I am not going to sit on this rock and listen to a man die on a live feed while 16 shooters run out of paper to fill in. And then from behind him, a voice said, Sir, you don't have to do that. Vance turned around. He almost didn't recognize her. He knew the face the way you know the face of somebody who hands you things. Coffee, batteries, a cleaning rod. He had probably said thank you to this person 80 times and had never once looked at her while he said it. Who are you? Carter, sir. Support. Support. Yes, sir. And you have something to say about a 4,200-yard shot. Yes, sir, I do. Vance was too tired to be cruel. That's the only reason he asked the next question instead of walking away. What? You fired 163 rounds today, Emily said, and you're going to tell yourself that the distance beat you. It didn't. The distance is just arithmetic. What beat you is that every man on this rock solved the same problem 16 different ways using numbers that were true, 9 weeks ago in a different country. That is a very confident thing, Vance said, for a person who has never been asked to shoot anything. That's right, sir, she said. Nobody's ever asked. And then she said it, and her voice didn't rise at all, and somehow that was worse. I'm asking. Iverson stood up. Sir, this is insane. Petty officer. This is a stunt. She wants to be in the story. Sir, I have been shooting for 11 years. Ramirez has been shooting for 9, and this woman fixes bolts. Petty Officer Iverson, Duvall said, shut your mouth. Master Chief, I said shut your mouth, and I am going to tell you why, and you are going to stand there and take it. Duvall got up off the rock, and he was suddenly a very large man. 9 weeks ago, there was a report filed on that ammunition. 31 feet per second, slow extreme, spread out of tolerance. That report was correct. Do you know who signed it? Nobody said anything. E4 Cartery. It went to Supply, sent it to us, and it sat in the folder in the corner of my tent that I never opened because I have been doing this for 31 years, and I decided I already knew what was in it. He turned and looked out at the valley. So don't tell me who's playing a game up here, son. I've been shooting all morning with a piece of paper in my pocket that told me exactly why I was missing, and I was too proud to read it. Emily was looking at the ground. Look at me, Carter. She looked up. How long have you known you could make this shot? Since about 0800, Master Chief. That's 4 hours. Yes. Why didn't you say something at 0800? And here it came, and her voice finally broke just a little, just once. Because I've said something before, she said. Nobody breathed. In Coronado, I told a chief his Zero was walking because his base screws were backing out, and he told me to stick to torque wrenches. In Bagram, I told a team their ammo was slow and they filed it and forgot it, and it's in your pocket. When I got to this unit, I said once on my 3rd day that I could shoot, and a room full of men laughed for about 15 seconds, and one of them asked me if I meant with a camera. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist and left a black smear of carbon across her cheekbone and didn't notice. So I stopped, because every time I opened my mouth, I paid for it for 6 months. And I want you to understand something, Master Chief, because you're going to think about this later, and I don't want you thinking about it wrong. I didn't stay quiet this morning because I was afraid of Iverson. I stayed quiet because I was doing the math and I couldn't get it under a 50% probability, and I would rather be invisible for the rest of my life than raise my hand and miss. And now, Vance said, now the sun's moved off that rock face, Emily said. The thermal's collapsing. In about 40 minutes, that column of air is going to lie down and go to sleep, and for maybe 20 minutes, the valley is going to be the closest thing to honest it will be all day. And your probability. She was quiet for a second. 61%, she said. You're telling me 61. I'm telling you the truth, sir. Anybody who tells you more than that is selling you something. Vance looked at her for a long, long time. Where did you learn all this? And she almost smiled. From a man who spent 40 years telling people things they didn't want to hear, she said. He a shooter. He was a Marine, sir. What's his name? Carter, she said. James Carter. Duvall's head came up so fast it looked like it hurt. Say that again. Colonel James Carter, Master Chief. Colonel James Carter out of Quantico. Yes. Duvall sat down, just sat straight down on the rock like his knees had been taken out from under him, and he started to laugh. And it was not a happy sound. It was the sound of a man watching 31 years of his own certainty walk out the door. What? Vance said. Master Chief, what? Sir, Duvall said, every dope card that any of us has ever built comes out of a book. And there's a chapter in that book about reading vertical convection over dark rock at extreme range that every sniper school in this country has been teaching word for word since 1978. He looked up at Emily. Your grandfather wrote it. Yes, Master Chief, Emily said. He did. He's been dead 11 years. Yes. I've quoted that man in my classes. I've quoted him this morning. Duvall put a hand over his mouth. And his granddaughter has been carrying my batteries up this hill for 8 months, and I never asked her one single question. The wind came up the face of the rock. Carter, Vance said. Sir. One shot. Sir. You get one? I don't have the rounds, and I don't have the time, and I sure as hell don't have the ability to explain 16 misses and a 17th to the people who will be reading about this. 1 round. That's what I can give you. That's more than I've ever been given, sir. Can you do it? And she looked across 2.5 miles of dead air at a man kneeling in the dirt with blood in his collar, and she said the only true thing she had left. I don't know, sir, but everybody else already didn't. Iverson made a sound. Everybody turned. He was standing with his rifle in his hands, and his face had gone through anger and out the other side into something raw and young and wrecked, and he held the weapon out toward her stock first. It's yours, he said. Petty officer, I have my own. You have your own, he repeated. Yes. Since when? Emily crossed the spur, knelt down, and pulled a long case out from under a stack of ammunition crates. Nobody on that ridge had ever looked at it twice. It had been sitting there for 8 months under things in the way the kind of object your eye slides off of, because you have already decided it's somebody else's problem. She opened it. Iverson looked inside and went absolutely still. That's a .338. Yes. That barrel's not stock. No. Who did that work? I did, Emily said, in the shop at night. For how long? 8 months. You've been building a rifle for 8 months in the middle of a war. I've been building a rifle for 8 months, Emily said, because it was the only thing I was allowed to touch. She lifted it out. And Cole Iverson, 11 years a shooter, looked at a weapon that had been assembled 100 feet from where he slept every night by a person he had called a mechanic 4 hours earlier. And he said very quietly, have you ever fired it? Yes. At what? At the ridge behind the wire. At what distance? Emily didn't answer right away. Carter, Duval said. At what distance? 4,200, she said, give or take. When? Every night for 8 months, she said. It's the only ridge I have. Nobody spoke. How many rounds? Duval asked. 2,311. 2,311 rounds at 4,200 yards. Yes, Master Chief. And nobody heard you. You heard me, Emily said. Every night you just thought it was the perimeter test fire because that's what it was on the schedule, because I'm the one who writes the schedule. Duval closed his eyes. Carter, Vance said, out of 2,311, how many hit? And she picked up the rifle and she looked out at the valley where the light was starting to change. And she said it without any pride at all, the way you'd read a number off a gauge. The last 400, she said, all of them. Nobody said a word for what felt like a long time, and then Duval said, show me. Master Chief, the log, you said you wrote it in a notebook. Nobody ever asked to see it. He held out his hand. I'm asking. Emily reached into her cargo pocket and pulled out a green field book so beaten and swollen with dust that the cover had gone soft as cloth. She put it in his hand. Duval opened it and his face changed by the page. This is every night. Yes. Temperature station, pressure, humidity, density, altitude, muzzle velocity, first round, second round, third round, called impact, observed impact. He turned another page. You've got sun angle in here. That's the important one. You've got sun angle logged to the minute for 8 months. That rock face is the whole problem, Master Chief. Everything on that ridge is a lie until you know what the sun's been doing to it. If you don't know how long the light's been on it, you don't know what the air is doing above it, and if you don't know what the air is doing above it, you're just guessing loudly. Ramirez had come over without anybody noticing. He was reading over Duval's shoulder. Master Chief, he said, look at the last section. I'm looking. No, look at it. There's no strings. It's one round a night. Duval stopped. Carter explained that. I stopped shooting groups about 5 months ago. Why? Because groups are a lie too, Emily said. A group tells you what a hot barrel does. Nobody's ever going to hand me a hot barrel. The only shot I'm ever going to get is the first one out of a cold rifle in whatever weather God feels like that day. So that's the only shot I practice. You fired 1 round a night. Yes. For 5 months. Yes, Master Chief. How many foam? 137 cold bores. And how many hit? Emily didn't say anything. Carter, how many hit? 137, she said. Ramirez made a sound like he'd been hit in the stomach. Duval very slowly closed the notebook and held it against his chest with both hands like it was something that could get away from him. Sir, he said, sir, I need you to come look at this. I heard it, Vance said. No, sir, you heard it. You need to look at it. But Iverson wasn't looking at the notebook. He was looking at Emily, and there was something happening behind his eyes that was worse than anger. It's not the same, he said. Petty officer. It's not the same, and everybody standing here knows it isn't. He turned to Vance. Sir, that ridge behind the wire doesn't have a man on it. That ridge doesn't have a knife. That ridge doesn't have a countdown, and it doesn't have 16 people breathing on the back of your neck. And it does not have a 200-pound weight sitting on your chest that says, if you miss, he dies and everyone will know it was you. He pointed at Emily without looking at her. She shot 137 perfect rounds at a rock. Nobody's ever asked her to do it while a human being screams. And the terrible thing was that he wasn't wrong, and every man on that spur knew it, and Emily knew it best of all. He's right, she said. Iverson blinked. Say that again. I said you're right. She looked at him. That's exactly the difference. That's the only difference. Everything else is arithmetic, and I've already done the arithmetic. What you're describing is the part I can't practice. Then how do you know you can do it? I don't. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one you're going to get today, Emily said. You want me to stand here and tell you I'm certain Master Chief was certain at 0600. You were certain at 08. Everybody on this rock has been certain since sunrise, and there's a man out there bleeding into his shirt collar because of it. Iverson's jaw worked. 61% what he said. 61. Would you take that number if it was your brother out there? I'd take it if it was me out there, Emily said, because 61 is what's left. The other option is 0. The radio broke in before Iverson could answer, and it was the tent, and the voice was moving too fast. Ironwood, Ironwood, we have a third transmission. Vance closed his eyes for a second. Send it. Sir, you need to see this one. He's got Whitmore's phone. He's got his personal phone, sir. He's reading the man's text messages on camera. Say again. He's reading them out loud, sir. He's reading messages from Whitmore's daughters. Nobody on that spur moved. Sir, the radio said, and the kid's voice cracked right down the middle. He's reading a message from a 9-year-old girl asking her dad if he's going to be home for her birthday, and he's laughing, and then he asked the camera if we want to hear the rest. Vance turned and walked 6 steps away and put both hands on a rock and stood there with his head down. Duval keyed his mic. Base, this is Duval. Is Whitmore alive? Affirmative. Is he conscious? Affirmative, Master Chief. Is he watching this? A pause. Yes, Master Chief. Duval took his finger off the mic and said something under his breath that wasn't for anybody, and then he keyed it again and his voice was perfectly flat. Copy. Keep it away from the junior guys. Master Chief, the whole tent's already seen it. Then get them outside. He let go of the mic. Emily hadn't moved the entire time. She was looking across the valley with an expression Iverson would think about for the rest of his life, because it wasn't rage and it wasn't grief. It was arithmetic. She was doing math, while a man's children were being used as a knife, and she was doing it because it was the only weapon anybody had ever let her hold. He's not doing that for Whitmore, she said. What? He's not doing that to hurt Whitmore. Whitmore's already hurt. He's doing that to us. To make us angry, Ramirez said. To make us rush, Emily said. An angry shooter pulls. An angry commander sends men across open ground because he can't stand to sit still anymore. She turned to Vance's back. Sir, he wants you to walk that valley. That's the whole point of the phone. Vance didn't turn around. I know, he said. Sir, I know Carter. I've known for an hour. It doesn't help. And then the translator came up the rock. His name was Specialist Amir Haddad, and he was 23 years old, and he had been sitting in a tent with headphones on for 6 straight hours running the audio of that first video through every filter he had, and he came up that spur so fast he fell twice and didn't stop for either one. Sir, the whisper. Vance turned around. I got it. I got the whisper, the one at the end when he leans in. Say it. Haddad had his laptop open and his hands were shaking so badly he had to set it on a crate. Sir, he's not speaking Pashto. That's why nothing worked. He's speaking English. He's whispering English with a Pashto accent, and it's so quiet that the software kept trying to make it Pashto and coming up with nonsense. Specialist, what does it say? Haddad looked up. It says, read chapter 9. The wind came across the spur, and nobody said anything at all. Read what? Ramirez said. Chapter 9, Sergeant. That's what he says. He leans into Whitmore's ear, and he's not talking to Whitmore. He's looking at the camera, and he says, read Chapter 9. Duval lowered himself onto a crate very slowly. Master Chief, Vance said. Duval didn't answer. Master Chief. Sir, Duval said, there's a manual. What manual? There's a book, sir. Every sniper school in this country teaches out of it. Marine Corps wrote it, Army stole it, we stole it from them. It's the foundation. You don't graduate anywhere in this country without knowing that book cold. He looked up. Chapter 9 is convection and mirage over irregular terrain at extreme range. He's quoting our own doctrine at us, Vance said. He's not quoting it, sir. Duval's voice had gone strange. He's using it. Chapter 9 has a section on defilade by atmosphere. It's about how certain geometry, certain rock, certain sun angle produces a column of rising air that makes a position functionally unreachable by long-range fire. It's a page and a half. It's in every classroom in America. You're telling me, Vance said slowly, that he picked that compound because our own book told him it was safe. I'm telling you, he picked that compound to the meter, sir. That's why he won't move him. That's why he's standing in the open. He knows what our book says about that piece of ground because he learned it from us. From us? Sir Town, Haddad said quietly. We ran his file again. Barakat trained at a coalition program in 2004. Counterinsurgency marksmanship. 11 weeks. He was in the top 3 of his class. He swallowed. Sir, we taught him. Iverson turned around and walked 10 feet away and stood there with his hands on top of his head. And Emily Carter started laughing. It came out of her before she could stop it, one hard breath of a laugh, and every head on that ridge snapped toward her. Something funny, Carter, Vance said, and there was an edge in it now. No, sir. Then what? Sir, Chapter 9 is wrong. Silence. Say that again, Duval said. Chapter 9 is wrong, Master Chief. It's been wrong since 1978. Everybody in this country has been teaching an error for 36 years, and nobody caught it because everybody who reads it agrees with it. And the man who wrote it spent the last 4 years of his life trying to get somebody, anybody to publish the correction, and nobody would take his calls because he was old and he was retired and he wasn't anybody's problem anymore. Duval stood up. Carter. He wrote the correction out longhand, Emily said. 41 pages. He sent it to Quantico 3 times. The 3rd time they sent him back a form letter thanking him for his interest in the Marine Corps. What's the error? The error is that the column collapses from the top down. What? Chapter 9 says the thermal column over a heated rock face weakens uniformly as the sun comes off it. It doesn't. It collapses from the top down, and it does it fast, and for about 19 minutes there's a layer near the deck that's still fully alive, while everything above it has already gone flat. She pointed with her chin at the far ridge. That's why Iverson went 90 right and not left. He shot through dead air on the way out and hot air on the way in. The book says that's impossible. The book says the bullet would push left the whole way. The book is wrong, and my grandfather knew it was wrong, and he wrote 41 pages about exactly why, and nobody read a single one of them. How do you know it's the correction and not just an old man's theory? Duval said. And Emily said, because I've shot it 137 times. Duval stared at her. That's what the last 5 months are, Master Chief. That's the whole notebook. I wasn't practicing, I was proving his math for him 1 round a night because he died before he could and because nobody in the United States military was ever going to open his envelope. The spur was completely silent. Barakat's standing in the open, Emily said, because he read Chapter 9 and Chapter 9 told him he was safe. He's right about everything in that book. Everything. He's just got the 1 page that's wrong, and it's the only page that matters, and he doesn't know it's wrong, and I'm the only person alive who does. Vance walked over to her. Carter. Sir, how many people know about your grandfather's correction? 2, sir. Who, him, she said, and me. He's dead. Yes, sir. So it's you. Yes, sir. And Vance said very quietly, then it's you. And he turned to the radio. Higher headquarters said no. It took 11 minutes and it came back through a colonel in Bagram who had never met any of them and never would. And the words were very clean and very reasonable, and Vance stood there and listened to every one of them. Negative on that request, Ironwood. Sir, I need you to hear the technical basis. I've heard the technical basis, Commander. What I'm hearing is that you want to hand the shot to an E4 support specialist with no long-range qualification on record, no school, no combat marksmanship, time, and no authority to be behind that weapon. And you want to do it on a hostage recovery that is going to be reviewed line by people who have never been outside a building. Sir, we fired 163 rounds. I'm aware. Sir, 15 shooters. Every one of them missed. Then the answer is that the shot cannot be made, Commander, which is a fact you're going to have to sit with. Sir, it can be made. I have a person here who has made it 137 consecutive times. Set the sound. At Iraq. Yes, sir, at Iraq. Commander, the colonel said, and his voice got softer, which was worse. I've read the same file you have. Do you know what happens if she misses? It isn't that Whitmore dies. Whitmore's probably dying anyway, and both of us know it. What happens is that this becomes the story of the unit that let an armorer take a hostage shot because they ran out of ideas, and every one of those 15 men has that on him for the rest of his life. And so do you, and so does she. She's 24 years old. You're about to put something on her that she will carry until she's an old woman. Vance looked at Emily. Emily was looking at the ground. Sir, Vance said, she's carrying it already. Commander, she's been carrying it for 8 months, sir, and we handed it to her every single day, and we didn't even know we were doing it. There was a long pause on the net. Execute the ground option, the colonel said. Ironwood out. Vance took the handset off his ear and stood there holding it, and then he handed it back to the radio man without looking at him. Sir, Duvall said. Master Chief. Sir, what are your orders? Vance was quiet for maybe 5 seconds. Log that I acknowledged receipt, he said. Sir. Log the time. Log that I acknowledged receipt of the order and that I understood it. He turned around. Carter, get on the gun. Ramirez said, sir, and it came out strangled. I heard the order, Sergeant. I acknowledge the order. I'm going to be very clear about this because in about 6 weeks, a room full of people is going to ask each of you what happened on this rock. And I want every one of you to be able to tell them the truth without it costing you anything. He raised his voice. This is my decision. Mine. Nobody up here concurred. Nobody up here advised it. I ordered it over objection, and you all told me it was a mistake. Is that understood? Nobody answered. I said, is that understood? No, sir, Duvall said. Vance turned on him. Master Chief? No, sir, it's not understood, and I'm not saying it, and I'll tell you why. Duvall stepped forward. Because I had that report in my pocket, because I've been quoting a dead man's book all morning and missing with it, and because I've walked past that woman 1,100 times and never once said her first name. He looked at Emily. So if we're building a record here, sir, put me on it. Duvall concurred. Duvall recommended it. Duvall said out loud that she was the best shooter on this ridge and that everybody else, including him, should get out of her way. Master Chief. Ramirez concurs, sir, Ramirez said. Sergeant? Ramirez concurs, put it in the book. And then from 10 feet away with his hands still on top of his head and his back still turned, Cole Iverson said, Iverson concurs. He turned around. His eyes were wet and he did not care who saw it. Iverson concurs, he said again, and Iverson requests a spot. Emily looked at him. Petty officer, don't. He walked over. Don't be gracious about it. I don't want it. I called you a mechanic 4 hours ago. I said you wanted to be in the story. I said that to your face in front of everybody, with a man kneeling in the dirt 2 miles away, and I said it because I could not stand the idea that the answer had been sitting under a stack of ammo crates all morning, and I was too proud to look under it. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand. So I'm not asking to spot because I've changed. I'm asking because I have been calling wind on that valley for 6 hours, and I am the only person on this rock who has been wrong enough times today to be worth anything to you. Emily looked at him for a long moment. Your calls were good, she said. My calls were garbage. Your calls were good. Your book was wrong. She held his eyes. That's not the same thing. And if you spot for me, you're going to have to know the difference because I'm going to ask you for numbers and I need you to give them to me straight and not the way you think I want them. Yes. If I ask you what the Mirage is doing at 1800 and you don't know, you say you don't know. Yes. You don't guess to make me feel better. I won't. You don't guess to make yourself feel better either. Iverson swallowed. Yeah, he said. Okay, then get on the glass. She knelt at the case. Duval crouched beside her. Carter, Master Chief, how many rounds do you have? Of my loads? Yes. She lifted a small ammunition box out of the case and opened it, and Duval looked inside and went very still. Carter, I know. There's 4. Yes. You've got 4 rounds. I load them by hand, Master Chief. Every case gets weighed, every neck gets turned, every charge gets thrown twice and trickled to 1/10 of a grain, and it takes me about 40 minutes to make one. I can make about a dozen on a good night if I don't sleep. She closed the box. I've been making one a night and shooting one a night for 5 months. I've got 4 because 4 is what I've got. Then why are you telling the commander 1 shot? Because these 4 aren't the same, Emily said. One of them is from the current powder lot. The other 3 came out of a can I opened in April, and April powder that's been sitting in this heat is not April powder anymore. She held up the box. There's 1 round on this ridge that I know the truth about. 1. Everything else in here is somebody's opinion. Duval put his hand over his mouth. You fired one this morning, he said. Didn't you? Emily didn't answer. Carter. At 0540 of Master Chief. At what? At the ridge behind the wire. Cold bore first light, and I ran the density altitude before I did it. You already knew. I already knew. You've known since 0540 that you could make this shot, and you stood on this rock and watched us fire 163 rounds. And Emily said yes, and her voice didn't move at all, and that was the part that got him. Why? Because at 0540, the sun wasn't on that rock face yet, and my solution was good for about 20 minutes. And by the time anybody would have listened to me, the window was gone. And because, Master Chief, I want you to really hear this. If I had walked up to you at 0545 and said, Sir, I can hit that, what would you have done? Duval opened his mouth. He closed it. That's right, Emily said. You'd have told me to go get more water. She lay down behind the rifle. And that was when the radio said, Ironwood, he's moving him. Everything on that spur stopped. Say again, base. Sir, he's got Whitmore up. He's got him on his feet. He's walking him out of the structure. Where? Into the courtyard, sir. He's putting him against the north wall. That's 4 hours early, Ramirez said. That's 4 hours early. The deadline isn't until... He's not running a deadline, Emily said into the stock. He never was. The deadline was for us. He was always going to do it when he felt like it. Carter, is your window open? She didn't answer. Carter. Iverson Mirage. Boiling at 900, flat at 19. Give me a second on the far end. I don't have a second. Boiling at 3600, Iverson said, and his voice went up half an octave. It's still boiling at 3600. It's still hot down there. The low layer hasn't gone yet. How much? I don't know. How much coal? I don't know, Emily. I don't know. That's the truth. You told me to say it, so I'm saying it. I do not know. Good, she said. That's the right answer. Duval's voice very low. Carter, what's your number now? She was quiet. Carter, what's your probability? And Emily Carter, with 137 cold bores in a green notebook and 1 honest round in a box beside her elbow, and a man she had never met being walked to a wall 2.5 miles away, said 40. 40, Duval repeated. Yes, Master Chief. An hour ago, you told the commander 61. An hour ago, the low layer was going to be dead by now. It isn't. It's still boiling at 3600, and I don't know why. And I don't get to shoot a number I don't understand. So we wait. So we wait. Carter, he's putting him against a wall. I know what he's doing. Then shoot. I'm not going to shoot at 40%, Master Chief. Ramirez came off the glass so fast he nearly knocked the spotting scope over. Are you serious? Are you actually serious right now? He's got him on his knees against the north wall. He's standing right behind him. That's the shot that is the shot. That's the only geometry we've had all day, and you're lying there doing homework. Sergeant, Duval said. Master Chief, she's got him lined up. Sergeant, back off her. He is going to kill that man in the next 90 seconds. Then he's going to kill him, Emily said, because I miss at 40, and then he kills him anyway, and I've spent the only round on this ridge that tells the truth. Ramirez turned away and put both hands on the back of his neck and swore at the sky, and Iverson didn't move at all. He stayed on the glass. That was the thing Duval noticed and would remember later, that of all the men on that rock, the one who had called her a mechanic was the only one not saying a word because she had told him to give her numbers and nothing else, and he had decided that was his entire job now. Coal, she said, still boiling. Same intensity? No. Talk to me. It's ratty. It was a clean boil 10 minutes ago, straight vertical textbook. Now it's tearing. It's coming apart at the top and reforming like it can't decide. Emily's eye didn't move off the scope. Say that again. It's tearing at the top. Cole listened to me very carefully. Is it tearing or is it lying down? What's the difference? About a man's life, Emily said. Look at the top edge of the boil, not the bottom. Everybody watches the bottom because that's where the definition is. Look at the very top edge where it goes to nothing. Is it fraying sideways or is it sinking? A pause that went on so long, Ramirez made a noise. It's sinking, Iverson said. You're sure? It's sinking. It's coming down. Emily, the whole top third of that column just came down like somebody let the air out of it. And for the first time since sunrise, something happened to Emily Carter's face. That's it, she said. That's chapter 9. That's the whole thing. Top down, right there. That's 41 pages of an old man's handwriting happening in real time in front of 3 people who never read it. What's your number? Duval said. Give me the deck. Coal the bottom. Is the bottom still hot? The bottom's still hot. How hot? Hot. Full boil. It hasn't moved. That's the layer, Emily said. That's the 19 minutes. It's alive down there and it's dead up top. And the book says that can't happen. And it's happening, and I have exactly 1 round that knows about it. Number Carter. 55. That's still not... It's climbing Master Chief. It's climbing about a point a minute, and it's going to peak, and then it's going to fall off a cliff, and somewhere in the next 15 minutes, there's about a 90-second slot where the whole valley is honest, and I need Barakat to be standing still when it opens. He's standing still now. He won't be in 15 minutes. Then what are we doing? And Emily said, we're praying he likes the sound of his own voice. The radio came up from the tent. Ironwood, he's on camera again. Send it. Sir, he's talking. Sir, he's giving a speech. Vance put his hand over his eyes. What kind of speech? Long one, sir. Duval looked at Emily. Emily didn't look up from the glass. Told you, she said. Carter don't. I'm not being cute, Master Chief. I've watched 3 videos of that man, and he has never once done anything quickly. He's not a killer who talks. He's a talker who kills. That's not a personality, that's an operating pattern, and it's the only thing on this ridge working for us. Her jaw tightened. He's going to talk until he's satisfied. And then he's going to do it while he's still talking because that's the part he actually wants. Vance said, how do you know that? Because he cut Whitmore's face on camera and then wiped it clean first, Emily said. Sir, nobody wipes a man's face before they cut him unless they're thinking about the shot. He's not performing for us. He's performing for the lens. And a man performing for a lens will stand exactly where the light is good for as long as it takes. That's a guess. That's 8 months of watching him, Emily said. And no, sir, I'm not on the target package, and no, sir, nobody ever showed me the file. I watch the videos because they play them in the tent, and I'm the one who carries the coffee in. Nobody said anything. Then Haddad's voice came up the rock, and he was running again. Sir, the speech. What? He's saying names, sis. Vance turned. Whose names? Haddad stopped. He had gone gray. Ours, sir. Say that again, specialist. He's reading names of the men on this ridge, sir. Iverson came off the glass. He's got a list, Haddad said. He's reading it into the camera. He's got Master Chief Duval's name. He's got yours, sir. He's got Iverson's, Ramirez's, Petrov's. He's got ranks. He's got years of service. Sir, he's got Master Chief's date of retirement. That's not possible, Ramirez said. He said it twice, Sergeant. He said it slow. Duval stood there, and his face did absolutely nothing, which was how everybody there learned how bad it was. Where's he getting it? Vance said. Sir, I don't... Where is he getting it, specialist? Whitmore's phone, sir, Haddad said quietly. There's a manifest on it. Whitmore was writing the after action for the working group. It's got the roster. Vance closed his eyes. So he's known who we are since the first hour. Yes, sir. He's known exactly how many shooters we have. Yes, sir. That's what 93 was, Duval said, and his voice came out cracked and old. And 163, he wasn't just counting. He was checking us off. He knew how many of us there were, and he's been sitting there watching us go one at a time down a list he already had. And then Haddad said the thing that changed the shape of the day. Sir, there's one more. One more what? One more name at the end. He reads 15 names and then he stops and he says one more and he laughs. Whose? Haddad looked at Emily. Carter E., he said. Support specialist. Armorer. The wind came across the spur. He said, Haddad went on and he had to stop and start again. He said, and the girl who fixes the rifles. Emily didn't move. He's taunting us, Ramirez said. He's just reading a roster. No, Emily said. Carter. No, he read 15 shooters and then he stopped and he had made a joke about the armorer. She finally lifted her eye off the scope and there was something in her face that hadn't been there all day. Sergeant, a man who's counting rounds to the single digit, doesn't waste a line. He put me last because he thinks I'm the punchline. So he's told me exactly what he believes, Emily said. And what he believes is that there are 15 threats on this ridge, and one of them is a joke. And that means for the next 15 minutes, he is going to be watching 15 positions, and now not this one. She put her eye back down. He just told me I'm invisible, she said. He's the 16th person to tell me that this year, and he's the only one who's going to pay for it. Ironwood base. Send. Sir, he stopped talking. Everybody froze. Say again, base. He stopped, sir. Mid-sentence. He's looking off camera. Somebody's talking to him. Carter, Vance said. Not yet. Carter, if he's finished. Sir, the deck's still boiling. If I shoot into that layer right now, I put a round 3 feet high and 40 feet right, and I will hit the wall behind Whitmore's head. And I want you to hear the whole sentence. Sir, I will hit the wall behind Whitmore's head, and then Barakat will know we can reach him, and then he will move him inside forever, and we will never get another opportunity as long as any of us live. Vance stood there with his fists closed. Sir Base, he's back on camera. What's he doing? He's got the knife out again. Ramirez said, Emily, Tom, seen in the coal, the deck. Still hot. It moving. It's hang on. Cole, hang on, hang on. Iverson's voice had gone completely flat, which was the sound of a man who had emptied himself out to make room for one job. It's thinning, Emily, it's thinning. The bottom's thinning. How fast? Fast. How fast, Cole? I've never seen it do this. Nobody has, Emily said. That's the point. Nobody's ever been looking. Give me a rate. 30 seconds, maybe 45, and it's gone. Master Chief, talking. When that bottom layer goes, I need one uninterrupted minute. No radio, no voices, nobody touches this rock. If somebody so much as shifts their weight on this position, I lose the reticle and I don't get it back. Duval turned around and looked at 15 of the finest shooters in the United States Navy. You heard her, he said. Nobody moves, nobody breathes. If your knee hurts, it hurts. Sir, the radio said, he's pulling Whitmore's head back. Cole, 15 seconds on the layer. Sir, he's got the blade up. 10. Sir, and then Emily Carter said the last thing she would say for a full minute. Cole, when it's clean, you say clean. Don't say anything else. Don't say ready. Don't say now. Don't say my name. If you say my name, I'll hear you and I'll flinch, and a man will die because you wanted to be part of it. Understood. Say it back. Clean, Iverson said. One word. That's all I've got. The valley went quiet. Duval would spend 11 years trying to explain that minute to people, and he never managed it once because the truth was too small to sound like anything. Nothing happened. That was the whole thing. Nothing happened, and it was the hardest minute of his life. He watched a 24-year-old woman lie behind a rifle she had built with her own hands at night in a shop nobody visited, and he watched her stop being a person. That was the only way he could ever describe it. She stopped being a person and became a piece of equipment that happened to be breathing, and her breathing got slower and slower and slower until Duval found himself unconsciously matching it and had to force himself to stop because he was running out of air and she wasn't. Ramirez was praying, not out loud. His lips were moving. Vance had his hand over his mouth. And Cole Iverson, 11 years a shooter, the best natural wind reader in that unit, a man who had spent his entire adult life waiting for somebody to hand him a moment exactly like this one, lay in the dirt beside a woman he had insulted 4 hours earlier and gave up the only thing he had ever wanted and did it without a sound and did it right. Clean, he said. She didn't move. Duval's heart went sideways in his chest. She didn't move. She hadn't heard him. She'd gone somewhere, and she hadn't heard him, and the window was the rifle fired. The sound went out across the valley and came back off the far rock, and then there was nothing at all because there was nothing to see. That was the part nobody who hasn't done it understands. There is no thunderclap. There is no flash. There is a small noise, and then there is 6.5 seconds of a bullet existing somewhere out in the world where no human being can help it or hurt it or take it back. Nobody breathed. 1, 2. Ramirez's lips stopped moving. 3, 4. Vance found that he had put his hand flat on the rock. 5, 6. And Iverson said in a voice that didn't sound like his, "Oh my God." "What?" Duval said. What? Master Chief. "Iverson, what do you see?" "He's down," Iverson said. He's down, Barricades, down, he went straight down, he didn't." "Master Chief, he never heard it. He never heard it coming." The rock came apart. Ramirez screamed something that wasn't a word. Petrov grabbed the man next to him by both shoulders. Somebody was laughing and somebody else was crying, and Vance turned around and put his back against a boulder and slid down it until he was sitting in the dirt with his forearms on his knees, and he stayed there. Duval didn't celebrate. He looked at Emily. She hadn't moved. She was still behind the rifle. Her eye was still down. Her finger had come off the trigger and lay flat along the guard exactly where 40 years of an old man's voice had taught her to put it. And she was staring through 2.5 miles of nothing at a man she had just killed, and her face was completely empty. "Carter," he said. She didn't answer. "Carter." "Whitmore," she said. "What?" "Somebody get me Whitmore." "Carter, you got him. You got Barricade. It's done." "Master Chief, somebody get me Whitmore. Because if that man's hands are still tied and there are 11 fighters in that compound, then I just took away the only person in there with a reason to keep him alive." And the rock went silent again as fast as it had erupted. "Base," Vance said, and he was already back on his feet. "Base Ironwood, what's happening in that courtyard?" "Sir, we're standby." "Base." "Sir, there's movement. There's a lot of movement." "Base, what's happening to Whitmore?" "Sir, they're okay. They've got him up. 2 of them have got him up. They're dragging him toward the structure." "Cole," Emily said. "On it. Talk to me." 2 men, both on his arms. They're hauling him. "Emily, he's not walking. He's not helping them at all. He's dead weight." "Is he conscious?" "I can't tell." "Cole, I cannot tell. That's the truth. You told me to give you the truth." "Good. Keep going." No, they stopped." "Why did they stop?" "There's a 3rd guy. He's yelling at them. He's Emily. He's pointing at us. He's pointing right at this ridge." "Distance from the wall." 20 feet maybe." Emily's hand went to the ammunition box. Duval saw it and something in him lurched. "Carter." "Master Chief." "What are you doing?" "I'm loading." "Carter, that's April powder." "I'm aware." "That's not the round you know. That's the round you told me was somebody's opinion." "Yes, Master Chief." "Your solution's built on the honest one. You put an unknown velocity through that same solution, and you don't even know which direction you're wrong in." "That's correct," Emily said, and she closed the bolt. "That's exactly correct, and in about 40 seconds, those men are going to figure out that nobody up here can reach them anymore, and they are going to remember that they just watched their commander's head come apart because of an American officer they still have in their hands." "Carter." "Master Chief, I need you to understand something." She still hadn't looked up. "I fired the honest round. It's gone. Everything I do from here is a guess, but my guess has 137 cold bores under it, and their certainty has a hostage in it, so I'm going to guess, and you're going to let me because there is nobody else." Vance said, "Do it." "Sir, Master Chief, she's the only weapon on this ridge. Carter, do it." "Cole, wind. Full value left to right, 9 at the spur, and the deck's dead now. The whole thing's dead. Emily, that valley is flat. It's the flattest. I've seen it in 6 months. That's the window, she said. That's the 90 seconds. Of course it is. Emily. Cole, which one's the talker? Third guy, the one pointing. He the one giving orders. He's the one everybody's looking at. Then he's the one. She fired. 6.5 seconds. Down, Iverson said. Down, he's Emily. He's down. The other two, they dropped Whitmore, they dropped him, and they're running. They're running for the structure. They left him. They left him in the open. Sir, Emily said, get your ground element moving right now this second, because those two are going to get inside and get on a radio, and in 4 minutes there will be 30 men in that valley. Vance was already keying the handset. Duvall grabbed the spare box out of her case. Carter, you've got 2 rounds left. I know. 2. I know, Master Chief. And you don't know what either one of them will do. No? Then what's your plan? And Emily Carter said without any inflection at all, kill the radio. Say again. There's a mast on the north structure. It's been there all day. Everybody on this ridge has been looking past it for 6 hours because it isn't a person. She was already adjusting. 2 men just ran inside a building with the only thing in that valley that can bring reinforcements, and I'm holding 2 rounds of powder I don't trust, and I've got maybe 80 seconds of honest air left in the entire day. Carter, you can't hit a mast at 4,200. Master Chief, she said, nobody can hit anything at 4,200. That's what the book says. And the book's been wrong since 1978, and I've got the only 2 pages that know it. She fired, 6.5 seconds, and Cole Iverson made a sound that was not language. Talk to me, Duvall said. Iverson, talk to me. It's gone. What's gone? The mast. The mast is gone, Master Chief. She cut it. She cut it at the base. Nobody said anything. Nobody could. And then Vance, still holding the handset, still white as paper, said the only thing anybody managed for a full 10 seconds. How many rounds does she have left? 1, sir, Duvall said. 1. Yes, sir. Vance looked out at a valley where an American intelligence officer was lying in the open dirt with his hands tied behind him, 400 meters from a rescue element that hadn't stepped off yet, and 11 men in a compound who had just lost their commander, their voice and their radio in the space of 90 seconds. Carter, he said, what's your number? And Emily Carter with 1 round of April powder in a hot chamber, and the whole valley going soft on her and her grandfather's 41 unpublished pages doing exactly what he swore they would do, said, Sir, I stopped having a number about 3 minutes ago. Then get one, Vance said. Sir, get a number, Carter. I have got 11 men about to walk into 400 meters of open ground, and I need to know what you are and what you aren't. Sir, I've got 1 round of powder that sat in a can through an Afghan summer. It could be 30 feet per second fast. It could be 60 slow. It could be exactly right. I have no way to know which until it's already 6 seconds into the air, and by then it doesn't matter what I thought. So what do I tell them? And Emily said, tell them there's 1. Duvall's head turned. Tell them there's 1 round on this ridge, sir, and that it belongs to whoever needs it most, and that after it's gone, I am a woman lying on a rock with a very expensive stick. Vance keyed the handset. His voice came out steady, which cost him something. Ground element Ironwood actual. Step off. You have overwatch. Be advised, overwatch is 1 round. Say again your overwatch is 1 round. After that, you are on your own. The response came back after a half second, and it was a young man's voice, and it was almost cheerful, and that was the thing that broke Ramirez. Copy 1 round. Moving. Ramirez turned away and put his forehead against a rock. Sergeant. I'm good, Master Chief. Ramirez. I'm good. Cole, Emily said. The north wall. On it. What do you see in nothing yet? Look for the gun. There's no gun in the Piranha. Cole, there's a gun on that wall. It's been on that wall since sunrise. There's a firing port, and it's been open 11 hours, and nobody's put a face in it all day because their commander told them not to. How do you know that? Because if there'd been a gun in that port when we started shooting, that gun would have answered, Emily said. 163 rounds cracking over their heads, and not 1 man on that wall so much as looked up. That's not confidence. That's discipline. That's a man who told his people, do not reveal the gun until they walk. Iverson's voice dropped, and now they're walking. Now they're walking. Vance said, Carter, are you telling me there's a machine gun? Yes, sir. Since when? Since about 0700, sir. You've known since 7 this morning that there's a machine gun covering that valley, and you didn't say anything. I said something, sir. Emily didn't take her eye off the glass. At 0715, I told the ops chief there was a firing port on the north wall, with the shutter open and no dust on the sill, and he wrote it down on the board, and then somebody erased the board when the target package came in because I'm not on the target package, so it went in the trash with the coffee cups. Duval closed his eyes. Master Chief, Iverson said, and his voice had gone strange. I have movement in the port. Nobody breathed. Say again. There's a face in the port. Emily, there's a face in the port, and it just went away and came back. He's ranging them, Emily said. Ground element is 100 meters out, Vance said. He's ranging them. He's looking, then ducking, then looking. He's counting them in. Carter, sir, if that gun opens up at 150 meters into 11 men in the open, you will not have a ground element. You will have a recovery problem. Then shoot it. Sir, that's my round. Then it's your round. Sir, if I spend it on that port, Whitmore is lying in the dirt with his hands tied, and there are 9 men left in that compound, and not one thing on this ridge to stop any of them from walking out and finishing him. Vance said, then choose. And the whole rock went silent, because that was the sentence. That was the sentence that everybody on that spur would hear in their sleep for the rest of their lives. Not the shot, not the miss. That sentence spoken by a lieutenant commander who had run out of everything to a 24-year-old woman who had been carrying batteries up that hill for 8 months. Then choose. Cole, Emily said, is he traversing? No, he's static. He's dead center in the port. Is he laying the gun or is he watching? What? Is his head down on the sight or is he looking over the top? A beat. Over the top. He's not ready, Emily said. He's still looking. He hasn't laid the gun. Somebody told him a distance, and he doesn't believe it. And now his commander's dead, and there's nobody to ask. And that man is lying behind a machine gun trying to decide if he's allowed to start a fight that killed the last man who tried. Ground element 200 meters, Vance said. Emily Iverson said, not yet. He just put his head down. Not yet. Emily, his head is on the gun. Cole, is the Mirage still flat? It's flat, but it won't be for how long? 30 seconds, 20. It's already starting to breathe at 900. The whole thing is coming back, and I don't know what happens after that. Emily's finger came inside the guard, and then she took it back out. Carter, Duval said. Carter, what are you doing? Waiting. For what? For him to shoot. Ramirez turned around so fast his boots skidded. For him to what? Sergeant, sit down. For him to shoot. You're waiting for him to open fire on 11 Americans in the open. Yes. Are you out of your mind? Ramirez, sit down, Duval said. Master Chief, she just said, I know what she said, sit down. And then quietly to her, Carter, explain it, fast. He's in a port, Emily said. It's a hole in a mud wall about 18 inches across, and he is behind it. And the only part of him I can see is a shadow inside a shadow. And at 4,200 yards with a round, I don't trust, I cannot put a bullet into a shadow. I need a face. I need him committed. The moment he fires, he's welded to that gun, and he's not moving, and his muzzle flash tells me exactly where his head is to the inch. And in the meantime, he's shooting at our people. For about 1 second, Emily said. 1 second is a burst of 20. Yes. Somebody could die in 1 second. Yes, Sergeant. Ramirez's mouth was open. Do you have a better idea? Emily said, and for the first time all day, something got into her voice. Do you? Because I'm asking. I'm not being rhetorical. I've got 1 round in a hole in a wall, and if there is a man on this rock with a better idea, I will hand him this rifle right now, and I will carry his water for the rest of my life. Anybody, say it. Nobody said anything. Then I need him to shoot, she said. The gun opened up. Duval said later that the worst part was that it sounded like nothing. 2.5 miles away, a machine gun firing at your own people sounds like somebody knocking on a door in another apartment. Just a small, polite sound. Meanwhile, 11 men were being hosed down in the open, and the noise of it was a thing you had to imagine. The radio went insane. Contact, contact north wall. Get down, get down. Man down, we got a man down. Vance said, Carter. She didn't answer. Carter. She's gone, sir, Duvall said. Don't, sir, don't, she's gone. 2 men down, the radio screamed. Ironwood, we have 2 men down in the open. We are pinned. We cannot move. We cannot. Cole, Emily said, just that. Perfectly level, a woman reading a grocery list. Flash at the port. He's committed. He's on the gun. Emily, I've got his head. I've got his actual head. He's up in the port. He's right there. Mirage. It's coming back. It's coming back fast. 900's boiling again. 18's starting to move. The deck. The deck's still flat. How long? 10 seconds. Emily, 10 seconds and it's gone in and it is not coming back today. Ironwood, we have 3 down, 3 down. Cole, Emily said, clean. What? Say it when it's clean. It's clean now, it's clean. It's clean right now. And Emily Carter, with 1 round of powder, she did not trust in a chamber that had already been hot for 90 minutes with 3 Americans bleeding in the open dirt, 400 meters from a machine gun, with 16 people on a rock who had told her for 8 months that she was invisible, and with an old man's voice in her ear saying, you never fight the wind, you understand. It breathed all the way out and stopped. The rifle fired, 6.5 seconds. Nobody counted this time. Nobody could. The gun stopped. It just stopped. The little polite knocking sound across the valley stopped in the middle of a burst, and the silence afterward was so complete that Ramirez said out loud to nobody. What happened? Cole, Duvall said. Cole. Iverson didn't answer. Iverson, report. The port's empty, Iverson said. Say again. The port is empty, Master Chief. Confirm. Master Chief, I am looking at an empty hole in a wall and a machine gun barrel pointed at the sky. The rock erupted and Vance was already screaming into the handset. Move, 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 ground element, move. Now the gun is down, move. And Emily was already reaching for the ammunition box. Duvall caught her wrist. Carter. Let go, Master Chief. Carter, it's empty. Let go. Emily. He had never said her first name, not once in 8 months. Emily, it's empty. There's nothing left. You're out. And she stopped and she looked at the box and she looked at her hand in his, and something went out of her all at once like a wire being cut. I'm out, she said. You're out. Master Chief, they've still got 9 men in that. You're out, Emily. You did it. You put 4 rounds in the air today, and every one of them landed, and there isn't a man alive who's done that, and you're out, and now it's somebody else's turn to carry something. She let go of the box. Her hands started shaking about 4 seconds later, and they didn't stop for 20 minutes, and every man on that rock pretended very hard not to see it, which was the kindest thing any of them had ever done for her. The ground element got to Whitmore at 11 minutes past. They got to him, and they cut his hands loose, and a corpsman named Petrosky put his fingers on the man's throat and then put his face down close to Whitmore's mouth, and then sat back on his heels and keyed his radio and said one word. Alive. Duvall sat down on the rock. Vance handed the handset to somebody, walked 8 feet, and threw up. Nobody said a word about it. Ramirez was crying openly and didn't seem to know it. Petrov had his hands over his face. And Cole Iverson lay in the dirt with his eyes still on the glass because he had one job and nobody had told him to stop. And he said in a voice that came apart in the middle, they're carrying him, Master Chief, they're carrying him out. He's got his arm around Petrosky's neck. Master Chief, he's helping them walk. Duvall put his head in his hands. Emily hadn't moved. She was lying behind an empty rifle with her cheek still on the stock, and she was looking at a courtyard 2.5 miles away, where a man she had killed was lying in the dirt he had chosen because a book told him it was safe. Carter, Duvall said. Nothing. Emily, I'm here. You want to come off the gun? Not yet. Okay. Master Chief. Yeah. How many did I kill today? Duvall was quiet for a second. 3, he said. 3. Yes. And a radio mast. And a radio mast. Master Chief, the second one, the one that was pointing at us. What about him? I don't know if he was giving orders, Emily said. I said he was. I said he's the one everybody's looking at, and Cole said yes, and I shot him. But I don't know. He could have been the one telling them to put Whitmore down. He could have been the one saying, "Don't hurt him, we need him." I'll never know that. There is no version of the rest of my life where I get to know that. Duval didn't say anything for a while, and then he said the truest thing he had in him. "No," he said, "there isn't. Everybody keeps telling me I did something today." "You did." "I did arithmetic," Emily said. "That's all it was. It was numbers and a notebook and 8 months of nobody talking to me. The rest of it is going to be mine forever, and nobody's going to see that part either." Duval reached over and took the empty box out of her case and turned it over in his hands. "Carter, can I say something to you?" "Yes, Master Chief." "I've been doing this 31 years, and every one of those years I have told a room full of kids that the shot is the easy part. I've said it 1,000 times. I've said it so many times it stopped meaning anything. And I want you to know that about 2 hours ago I found out I didn't understand my own sentence." She turned her head and looked at him. "You knew at 0540, he said. "You could have made this shot at first light, and you stood on this rock for 7 hours and watched 15 men who never learned your name fire 163 rounds at a target you could reach, because you knew that if you spoke, we'd break you, and then nobody would get to shoot." "Master Chief, that's the shot," Duval said. "That's the whole shot, Carter. The trigger was the easy part. The thing you did between 0540 and 1300 is the hardest thing I've ever seen a human being do, and I watched every second of it, and I thought you were fetching water." Emily's face didn't move, but her eyes did. "Don't," she said. "Okay. Master Chief, please don't, because if you keep going, I'm going to come apart, and there are still people on that ridge, and I need to not come apart yet." "Okay," Duval said, and he put his hand flat on her back once and took it away and never mentioned it again for the rest of his life. The bird came in at 1420. Whitmore went out on it. He was conscious the whole way, and he kept trying to say something to Petrosky, and Petrosky kept telling him to shut up and save it. And later in Bagram, when they finally let him talk, the first thing Daniel Whitmore asked was not about his daughters, and it was not about the men who carried him out. He asked, "Who shot?" And a very tired major said, "Sir, don't worry about that right now." And Whitmore, with 41 stitches in his face and both wrists in bandages, and his voice sounding like a door dragging over gravel, said, "I asked who shot." Nobody answered him for 6 days. That was the part nobody had prepared any of them for. The colonel from Bagram landed at Ironwood at 1800, and he was not angry, which was somehow worse. He was reasonable. He sat in the ops tent with his hands folded, and he said reasonable things in a reasonable voice for 2 straight hours. "Commander, I want to establish something at the top. Nobody's in trouble." "Sir, nobody's in trouble. A hostage came home. That's the outcome. That outcome is the only thing anyone outside this tent is ever going to care about. And I want you to hear me say that first, because everything I say after it is going to sound like something else." "Yes, sir." "You were given an order and you acknowledged it, and then you did the opposite of it." "Yes, sir." "Say it plainly for me." "I was ordered to execute the ground option and not to authorize the shot," Vance said. "I acknowledge receipt. I authorized the shot. I logged both. It's in the book with my initials next to it, sir, and I did that on purpose so that nobody would have to remember it wrong later." The colonel looked at him for a long moment. "That's an unusual thing to do to yourself, Commander." "Yes, sir." "Why did you do it?" And Vance said, "Because in 6 months, somebody is going to try to tell this story with her cut out of it, sir, and I wanted there to be a piece of paper that made that impossible." The colonel didn't answer that. Then he said, "Where's the specialist?" They brought her in. She stood at attention in front of a colonel she had never met in a tent. She had carried coffee into 400 times with carbons still on her hands, and the colonel looked at her for a while and then said something that nobody in the room expected. "Sit down, Carter." "Sir, I'm fine standing." "Sit down." She sat. "I read the report," he said, "the ammunition report, 9 weeks ago." Emily didn't say anything. "It came across my desk. I want you to understand the mechanism because you're 24 and you're going to spend the next 40 years being angry at the wrong thing if nobody explains it to you." He leaned forward. "It came across my desk in a stack of about 60 items, and it was 1 paragraph long, and it was correct, and I initialed it, and I routed it, and I do not remember reading it. That's not a lie, specialist. That's not me covering. I genuinely do not remember it. It went through me like water through a pipe. Yes, sir. Do you know what that means? It means nobody read it, sir. It means the system worked exactly as designed and the colonel said. And the design is that a correct thing written by a junior person disappears. Not because anybody's evil, because everybody's busy. Because I've got 60 items and a war and your paragraph doesn't have a rank on it. He sat back. 163 rounds, Carter. 15 shooters. A man got his face opened on a live feed. And the reason for every bit of it is one paragraph that I initialed without reading. The tent was very quiet. I'm not going to apologize to you, the colonel said. You'd hate it and it wouldn't be worth anything. I'm going to do something else instead. Where's the correction? Emily's head came up. Sir, the 41 pages, your grandfather's correction to chapter 9. Where is it? She looked at him. It's in a box, Samir, in Montana. In a box. In my mother's garage, sir, in a footlocker with his uniforms. For 11 years. Yes, sir. The colonel put his hand over his mouth for a second. Specialist, do you understand what happened on that ridge today? I made a shot, sir. No, the colonel said. No, you did not. Today a man read our own doctrine, chose a piece of ground. Our doctrine told him was unreachable and stood in the open in front of 15 American snipers and taunted them for 11 hours, and he was completely correct to do it because our doctrine has been wrong since 1978, and he trusted us. He trusted us more than we trust ourselves. And the only reason he's dead is that one 24-year-old in the entire United States military happened to be the granddaughter of the one man who noticed the error, and she happened to be standing on that specific rock on that specific day, holding 4 rounds she built herself. He looked around the tent. Do you understand how close that is? Do any of you understand how close that is? If Carter takes a different assignment in March, that man lives. If Carter's grandfather, he has one more year, he publishes it himself, and every one of you knows it, and today is just a Tuesday. If her mother throws out a footlocker while cleaning the garage, we are still shooting at that valley in a week. Nobody breathed. That's not a hero story, the colonel said. That's a near miss. That's the nearest miss I have ever seen in 30 years, and it terrifies me. And I have been sitting in a helicopter for 2 hours trying to decide what to do about it, and I've decided. Sir, Vance said. Specialist Carter, I'm sending you to Montana. Emily blinked. Sir, you are going to get on an airplane tomorrow, and you are going to go to your mother's garage, and you are going to open that footlocker, and you are going to bring me 41 pages of a dead Marine's handwriting, and then you and I are going to Quantico. Sir, that's not a request. Sir, they sent him a form letter, Emily said, and it came out before she could stop it, and it came out with 11 years in it. 3 times he mailed it, and the 3rd time they sent him a form letter thanking him for his interest in the Marine Corps. He read it out loud to me at the kitchen table. He laughed, sir, he laughed, and then he went out to the shop and he didn't come in for dinner. The colonel didn't move. He's the reason they have that chapter at all, Emily said, and they thanked him for his interest. I know, the colonel said. Sir, with respect, you don't. Specialist. They're not going to publish it because a support specialist carried it in from a garage. They're going to put it in a folder in a corner of a tent, and they're going to decide they already know what's in it because that's what happens. That's what always happens, and I would rather leave it in the footlocker than watch them do it to him twice. Duval's voice came from the back of the tent, and it was very quiet. Sir? Master Chief? Sir, she's right. The colonel turned. They won't take it from her, Duval said. They'll take it from me. I've been teaching Chapter 9 at that schoolhouse since 2001. I've got 31 years and a name in that building, and I have personally stood in front of 400 students and taught them an error word for word out of a book I never questioned. And I will walk into Quantico and say that out loud in front of anybody they want to put in the room. That'll end your career, Master Chief. Sir, my career ended at 0600 this morning, Duval said. I just didn't notice until about 1300. The colonel looked at him for a long time. Carter, he said, would that work? And Emily said, Sir, I don't know. Guess. Sir, I've been guessing all day. Then guess one more time. And Emily Carter, 24 years old, with carbon on her hands and an empty ammunition box in her cargo pocket. that she would carry for the rest of her life, looked at a Master Chief who had walked past her 1,100 times and had learned her first name that afternoon on a rock, and she said the thing that ended it. "Sir, it'll work," she said, "but not because of him, and not because of me, Paraman. Then because of what?" "Because of Barakat," Emily said, and the tent went cold. "Sir, my grandfather wrote 41 pages and nobody read them, and I shot 137 coal bores and nobody watched, and Master Chief filed a report he never opened. None of that moves anybody. You know what moves people? Today, an enemy commander stood in the open in front of the United States Navy for 11 hours because he believed our book. And our book is the only reason he's dead. He proved my grandfather right. He's the only one in this entire war who ever actually read the man's work and took it seriously enough to bet his life on it." Her voice finally went. "Sir, the only person who ever really listened to my grandfather was the man I killed this afternoon." Nobody in that tent said anything for a long time. Then the colonel said, "Say that again, specialist." "Sir, I'd rather not." "Say it again." And Emily said it again, and it cost her more the second time. "The only person who ever really listened to my grandfather was the man I killed this afternoon." The colonel stood up. He walked to the far side of the tent and stood there with his back to all of them for maybe 15 seconds, and when he turned around, his face had changed. "Carter, I want you to hear something, and I want you to hear it from a man who has no reason to be kind to you." "Yes, sir." "You're wrong." Emily's chin came up. "You're wrong, and it matters that you're wrong, so I'm going to fix it right now before you carry it out of this tent and it grows." He came back and sat down across from her. "Barakat didn't listen to your grandfather. He read him. That's not the same thing, and you know it's not because you've spent your whole life on the difference. He read 40 pages of a man's work, took the one page he liked, and used it to put a knife in an American's face. That's not listening. That's stealing a tool and using it as a weapon." "Sir, listening," the colonel said, "is what happened on that rock at about 12:40 this afternoon when a 51-year-old Master Chief with 31 years and a chest full of paper put his own certainty down in the dirt and said, 'Tell me about the ammunition.'" Duval didn't move. Listening is a petty officer who wanted that shot more than he's wanted anything in his life, lying in the dirt and saying one word because you told him one word was all you needed. The colonel's voice got harder. "Listening is a lieutenant commander acknowledging a lawful order from me in writing and then throwing it in a fire because a 24-year-old told him the truth and he believed her." "Sir, I'm not finished." He leaned in. "Your grandfather spent 4 years mailing that correction to a building. Buildings don't listen, Carter. People do. And it took 11 years and a dead man and a hostage and 163 misses. But today, 4 people finally did. And every one of them is sitting in this tent, and you're about to walk out of here telling yourself the only man who ever heard him was a butcher with a camera. Don't you dare. Don't you dare do that to them, and don't you dare do it to him." Emily's hands were shaking again. She put them under the table. "Yes, sir," she said. "Say it like you mean it." "Sir, I can't yet." And the colonel unexpectedly softened. "That's fair," he said. "That's the first fair thing anybody's said to me all day." The flight to Montana left Bagram at 06 the following Tuesday, and Emily Carter spent 11 hours of it not sleeping. Duval sat across the aisle. He didn't try to talk to her for the first 6 hours, which she appreciated more than she could have explained, and then somewhere over the Atlantic he said, "Carter, Master Chief, what was he like?" She looked at him. "My grandfather." "Yeah." "Master Chief, you've read him. Everybody's read him." "That's not what I asked." Emily was quiet for a while. "He was hard," she said. "People always want me to say he was warm. He wasn't. He was hard and he was quiet and he had a way of asking you a question that made you understand you'd already gotten it wrong. When I was 9, he made me sit in a field for 4 hours and tell him what the grass was doing. Not what the wind was doing, what the grass was doing. Because he said the wind's invisible and only fools claim to see invisible things, so you learn to read what it touches." Duval said nothing. "He wasn't warm until the end," Emily said. "The last 2 years after the 3rd letter came back, he got warm. That's how I knew he was dying. He started saying things out loud that he'd never said in 40 years. That was the worst part, not the funeral, the warmth." "What did he say?" "He said he'd made a mistake. About chapter 9. About the letters, Emily said. He said he'd spent 4 years trying to convince the Marine Corps, and he should have spent 4 years teaching one person. He said institutions don't learn, Emily, only people learn. And I forgot that at the end, and I wasted my last good years talking to a mailbox. Duval put his head back against the seat, and then he said, so I taught you instead, and that'll have to be enough. Duval was quiet for a long time. Carter, he said, that's not a consolation prize. Master Chief, he didn't say that because he'd given up. Duval turned his head. He said that because he'd figured it out. 41 pages in an envelope don't do anything. 41 pages in a person walk onto a rock in Afghanistan 11 years later and save a man's life. He wasn't settling for you. He was choosing the only delivery system that's ever worked. Emily looked out the window for a while. Master Chief? Yeah, I need you to be right about that. I know, Duval said. That's why I said it. The garage in Montana smelled like cold concrete and motor oil, and her mother cried for 11 minutes before she could speak. The Foot Locker was under a tarp behind a snowblower that hadn't run since 2009. Emily's mother sat on an overturned bucket and watched her daughter open it and said, there's nothing in there but his blues. There's a folder. There's no folder, honey. I went through it. There's a folder, Mom. Emily, I went through the whole thing when he passed. It's uniforms and his ribbons and that stupid coffee can. And Emily's hands stopped. What coffee can? The Folgers can, the one he kept on the shop bench. I couldn't throw it out. I don't know why. It's just Emily was already digging. She came up with a rusted 3-pound coffee can with a plastic lid taped down with electrical tape that had gone hard and brown, and she sat back on her heels in her mother's garage, and she couldn't get the lid off because her hands wouldn't work. Duval knelt down and took it from her and got it open and looked inside and didn't say anything at all. Master Chief? He handed it back. Inside rolled into a tube and rubber-banded 41 pages of an old man's handwriting and rubber-banded to the outside of the roll 3 envelopes. Unopened. Addressed to Colonel James Carter, Missoula, Montana, from Quantico, Virginia. Mom, Emily said. Mom, he never opened them. Her mother put her hand over her mouth. He read one out loud to me, Emily said. At the kitchen table, he read me the whole form letter. Thank you for your interest in the Marine Corps. He read it to me and he laughed and he went out to the shop. Emily was staring at 3 sealed envelopes. Mom, he never opened them. He memorized what they were going to say and he said it out loud so I'd hear it, and he never opened a single one. Nobody spoke. Why would he do that? Her mother said. And Duval said very quietly, because he already knew what was in them, and he wanted her to know too. Emily looked up at him. Master Chief? He wasn't reading you a letter, Carter, Duval said. He was reading you a lesson. He wanted a 16-year-old girl to watch a man get told no by the whole United States Marine Corps and then go back out to the shop anyway. That's the whole thing. That's what he was doing. He didn't need to know what they wrote. He needed you to see what he did next. Emily's mother said, open them. Mom, Emily Ray opened them. And Emily opened the first envelope, and it was a form letter, and it said, thank you for your interest in the Marine Corps. She opened the second form letter, she opened the third, and she stopped breathing. Emily didn't answer. Emily, what's it say? She held it out to Duval without looking at it, and Duval took it and read it and had to sit down on the concrete floor of a garage in Missoula, Montana. It's not a form letter, he said. What? It's handwritten. Duval's voice had gone strange. Ma'am, it's handwritten. It's from a lieutenant colonel at the schoolhouse, and it's dated 4 months before he passed, and it says, he stopped. He started again. It says, Colonel Carter, I've read all 41 pages 3 times. I believe you are right. I've taken it to the board twice. I've been told the chapter is foundational and cannot be revised without a data set nobody is willing to fund. Sir, I'm sorry. I don't have a way to make them look at it. If you ever find someone who can prove it with rounds instead of paper, send them to me. I'll open the door, respectfully. Nobody in that garage said a word. He never opened it, Emily whispered. No. Master Chief, there was a man. There was a man on the inside who believed him. For 4 months, there was a man on the inside who believed him and was waiting, and he never opened the envelope. Carter. He died thinking nobody heard him. Emily's voice broke completely for the first time in 8 months, in 11 years, maybe in her whole life. He died thinking nobody heard him, and it was sitting on his shop bench in a coffee can 6 feet from where he ate breakfast every morning for 4 months. Her mother was on her knees on the concrete holding her, and Duval sat there with the letter in his hand and did the only useful thing left in the world. He looked at the signature block. Carter. Don't. Carter, look at the name. Master Chief, please. Emily, look at the name. She looked, and she said, that's not possible. It's possible. That's not. Carter, I sat in a tent with that man for 2 hours last Tuesday, Duval said. He's a colonel now. He put you on this airplane. The room in Quantico held 19 people, and Emily Carter had never been more afraid in her life in musing on the rock. Specialist Carter. Sir, you understand what you're asking this board to do? Yes, sir. Say it, please. For the record, I'm asking you to revise Chapter 9 of the reference manual, sir. You're asking us to revise a foundational chapter of the sniper doctrine of the United States military, a colonel down the table said, which has been taught continuously since 1978 on the basis of a notebook in one engagement. Yes, sir. On the basis of a personal notebook. Yes, sir. Kept by an E4. Yes, sir. With no long-range qualification. That's correct, sir. Specialist, another voice said, not unkindly, do you understand that if we're wrong about this, we teach the error to every student who comes through this building for the next 30 years? Yes, sir. That's exactly what you did to the last 30 years. The room went very still. Say that again, Specialist. And Emily said, sir, you're asking me if I understand the cost of being wrong. I do. I've been living in it. Barakat lived in it too, and he trusted you, and it killed him. Sir, this chapter has already been wrong for 36 years, and the only reason it hasn't cost this country anything worse is that until last month, nobody on the other side had read it carefully enough to use it. Somebody down the table put his pen down. You're saying it's a vulnerability. I'm saying it's a published, unclassified, freely available operating manual that tells any literate enemy exactly which piece of ground the United States cannot shoot at, sir, and the instruction is wrong, and it's been wrong since before I was born. And one man in Afghanistan figured that out, and he was in the top 3 of a course we taught him. Specialist. Sir, he didn't just use it, Emily said. He built his entire operation on it. He chose his compound with it. He chose the sun angle with it. He stood in the open in front of 15 American snipers for 11 hours because your book gave him permission, and your book was wrong, and 163 rounds proved it. Her voice didn't rise. It got quieter, which was worse. Sir, the enemy has more faith in this chapter than we do. That should terrify you. The colonel at the head of the table said, Master Chief Duval. Sir, you've taught this chapter. Since 2001, sir. How many students know? 411, sir. And you're telling this board you taught them wrong? Yes, sir. Every one of them. Every one of them, sir, word for word out of the book. And I want to say this part slowly because I've had 11 days to think about how to say it. Duval stood up. I didn't teach it wrong because I was lazy. I taught it wrong because I was good. I was the best instructor in this building for 6 years, and the reason I was good is that I believed every word of that chapter with my whole chest, and I could make 18-year-olds believe it too. Sir, my excellence is the delivery mechanism. If I'd been mediocre, it wouldn't have stuck. Nobody moved. And I had a report in my pocket, Duval said. 9 weeks. 9 weeks in a folder in the corner of my tent that told me exactly why I was missing, and I didn't open it because it was one paragraph, and it didn't have a rank on it. Sir, on that rock, I fired 11 rounds at a man I could not reach, while the answer sat under a stack of ammunition crates in a rifle case, a 24-year-old built at night, and I walked past that case 9 times that morning. Master Chief. Sir, I'm asking this board to revise Chapter 9, Duval said. And if you won't, then I'm asking you to accept my request to be removed from the instructor roster because I will not go back in that classroom and say those words to another 400 kids. The room was silent for a very long time. Then the colonel who had flown to Ironwood, the colonel whose handwriting was in a coffee can in Montana, said, I have something to add to the record. Every head turned. In 2003, as lieutenant colonel at this schoolhouse, I received a 41-page submission from Colonel James Carter, retired. I read it 3 times. I believed it. I took it to this board twice, and I was told it was foundational and could not be revised without a funded data set. He put his hands flat on the table, and then I stopped. That's the part I want in the minutes. Not that I tried, that I stopped. I wrote the man a letter saying I was sorry, and that if he ever found somebody who could prove it with rounds instead of paper to send them to me, and then I went and had a career, and he died 4 months later, and I never once thought about him again until a helicopter ride 11 days ago. Nobody breathed. He never read your letter, sir, Emily said. The colonel looked at her. Say again, specialist. He never opened it, sir. It was in a coffee can in his shop, all 3 of them. He didn't open any of them. Her voice was steady. He assumed you were a form letter, and you were the one person in this building who wasn't. The colonel put his hand over his eyes and kept it there for a while, and 19 people watched a full colonel of the United States Marine Corps sit in a conference room and take something he was never going to put down. Well, he said finally, there it is. Sir, no specialist. Let me have it. I've earned it. He lowered his hand. I wrote a letter instead of a fight. That's what I did. I told an old man to send me somebody who could prove it with rounds, and then I put the burden on him to find that person, and he did. And it took him the last 4 years of his life, and it cost his granddaughter 8 months of being laughed at in a war zone and 137 nights alone on a firing line. Because I wanted my conscience clean and my career intact, and I got both. He turned to the head of the table. Sir, the data set exists. She funded it herself. 2,311 rounds, 137 consecutive cold bores, at 4,200 yards full atmospherics, logged to the minute, and a live engagement with 4 rounds and 4 hits under conditions the current chapter says are impossible. There is no better data set in the world, and there never will be, because nobody else is ever going to be lonely enough to build it. The board revised Chapter 9 11 months later. It took 11 months because that's how long things take, and Emily Carter learned something in those 11 months that she had not learned on the rock, that being right is the beginning of the work and not the end of it. She sat in rooms. She explained the same thing 400 times to men who had already decided. She watched a good idea get slowed down by nobody in particular, by process, by scheduling, by a captain who was retiring and didn't want to fight in his last quarter. And she didn't stop. The revision runs a page and a half. It's the section on defilade by atmosphere, and it says that the thermal column over a heated face collapses from the top down, and that for a period of roughly 19 minutes, a live layer persists near the deck, while the upper column has already gone flat. And it says that no firing solution built on uniform decay can be trusted through that transition. At the bottom of the page, there's an attribution line. It says Carter J. Colonel USMC, retired 2003, revised and validated Carter E. 2015. Duval found her the day the print copies came in. She was in a shop because she was always in a shop torquing something. Carter, Master Chief? You seen it? Oh, no. I've seen it. You look at the bottom of the page. I looked at it, and Emily set the wrench down. There's 2 Carters on it, she said. Yeah. Master Chief, there's 2 Carters on it, and one of them's him. Yeah, Duval said. There is. And Emily Carter put both hands flat on a workbench and put her head down and cried for the first time in front of another human being since she was 9 years old. And Duval stood there and let her, and didn't say one word and never told a living soul. They tried to give her a medal. She took it because you take it, and because Vance told her that refusing it would make the story about the refusal, and she had learned by then that he was almost always right about that kind of thing. But she said no to the rest of it. She said no to the interview. She said no to the recruiting posters, and she said no to the general's office, and she said no twice to a man from a production company who called her mother's house in Missoula and used the words incredible story. It's not incredible, Emily told him. That's the problem with it. I don't follow. Sir, if you make it incredible, you've made it useless. If I'm a miracle, then nobody has to change anything. Everybody gets to say wow and go back to work. She was quiet for a second. The whole point is that I was ordinary and standing right there the entire time. He didn't call back. She took orders to the schoolhouse in 2017. The first class she ever taught had 31 students in it, and not one of them knew who she was because she had made sure of that because she had asked Duval personally to keep her name out of the brief. She stood in front of them and she said, "Who here has read chapter 9? Every hand went up. Who here believes it? Every hand stayed up. Good," she said. "Then we're going to have a productive 11 weeks because I'm going to teach you a page and a half that's true, and I'm going to teach you 300 pages that are true, and somewhere in that book there is at least one more page that's wrong, and none of us knows which one it is." Somebody in the back said, "Ma'am, say it." "Ma'am, that's not respectfully. That's not how it was taught to us in prep." "I know. They told us the book is the book." "The book is a very good book, written by people who were doing their best with what they had," Emily said. "It's not scripture. It's the best guess of some very smart, very tired men, and it is wrong somewhere, and one of you is going to find it, and I want to tell you right now what's going to happen to you when you do." The room got quiet. "You're going to tell somebody," she said, "and they're going to laugh at you, not because they're bad people, because you'll be 22 and they'll be 45 and they'll have 400 things on their desk and your thing won't have a rank on it. And you'll tell them again and they'll write it down and somebody will erase the board. And you'll tell them a third time and they'll send you a form letter." Nobody moved. "And then you get to decide," Emily said. "That's the whole class. Everything else is arithmetic. That's the only decision any of you will ever actually make." "Ma'am, what's the right answer?" "You go back out to the shop," she said. Cole Iverson made Master Chief in 2023. At his ceremony, he was asked to say a few words, and he stood up in front of 200 people and his wife and his kids, and he did not talk about 11 years of shooting. "In 2014, I called a woman a mechanic," he said, to her face in front of everybody, with a man kneeling in the dirt 2 miles away. The room went uncomfortable. And 4 hours later, I lay down in the dirt next to her, and I had to give her one word. And it was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life, and I want to be honest about why. It wasn't hard because of the wind. It was hard because I wanted it to be me. He looked at the floor. I'd waited 11 years for that shot. 11 years. And the shot showed up and it wasn't mine, and the only thing left for me to do in the entire world was say one word and get out of the way. He looked up. "That's the job," he said. "Nobody tells you that. Everybody comes in thinking the job is the trigger. The job is knowing when the trigger isn't yours and saying the word anyway." Then he said, "Ma'am, stand up." And in the back of the room, an instructor from the schoolhouse who had told him twice not to do this stood up, and 200 people turned around, and Cole Iverson said, "That's the best shooter I've ever seen," and I called her a mechanic. Daniel Whitmore came to see her in 2019. He'd left the service. He had a scar from his cheekbone to his jaw and 2 daughters who were 15 and 11, and he sat across from Emily Carter in a coffee shop in Virginia, and neither of them knew how to start. "They wouldn't tell me who shot," he said, "for 6 days. I know. I asked everybody, corpsman, the major, the flight crew. Nobody would say. I thought—" He stopped. "I thought somebody had done something wrong. I thought that's why." "Somebody did do something wrong," Emily said, "for about 8 months. Whitmore didn't smile. "He read my texts," he said. Emily didn't say anything. "He had my phone and he read my daughter's messages to me out loud, and I want you to know that I made a decision while he was doing it. I decided that whatever happened after that, I wasn't going to let that be the last thing. That was the deal I made in my head, not with God, just with myself." He turned his cup around. And then something hit him and he was gone, and I didn't hear it. Do you understand? There was no sound. He was talking, and then he was on the ground, and there was no sound at all. And I lay there in the dirt for 11 minutes with my hands tied, thinking I'd lost my mind. "The bullet gets there first," Emily said. It's supersonic. The sound was about 6 seconds behind it. So the last thing he heard was his own voice. "Yes." Whitmore was quiet a long moment. "Good," he said. Then he said, "How far?" 4,211 yards. "That's 2.5 miles. "Yes." "How many people can do that?" And Emily said, "Anybody who does the work." "That's not an answer." "Mr. Whitmore, it's the only one I've got, and it's the true one," she said. "There was nothing exceptional in that valley. There was a man who read a book carefully, and a book that was wrong, and a woman who'd been checking the math for 5 months because nobody would talk to her. That's it. That's the whole thing. If one person on that ridge had asked me a question in March, you'd have been home by lunch. Whitmore looked at her for a very long time. My daughter's 11 now, he said. She was 9. I know. She asked me last year who saved me, and I told her I didn't know, because I didn't. And then this year they told me, and I told her. And do you know what she asked? No. She asked if you had kids. Emily didn't answer. And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, if she does tell her thank you from them too, because they get to have their mom. Whitmore's voice went. She's 11. She worked that out on her own. She worked out that somebody else's mom went and got hers. Emily Carter sat in a coffee shop in Virginia and could not speak. So thank you, Whitmore said, from an 11-year-old who's never met you and never will. Master Chief Ray Duvall retired in 2016, and he spent his last day in the building doing something he had never told anybody about. He went into the schoolhouse library where they keep every edition of the manual, going back to 1961, and he pulled the 1978 volume off the shelf and he opened it to chapter 9, and he read the whole thing one more time, start to finish the way he had 400 times. And then he read the byline, Carter J. Colonel USMC. He put the book back, he straightened the spine, and on his way out he stopped at the front desk and asked the young corporal working there a question. Son, when somebody hands you a piece of paper with no rank on it, what do you do with it? The kid blinked. Sir, it's not a trick. What do you do with it? I guess I route it, Master Chief. Read it first, Duvall said. Just read it. It takes 90 seconds. That's all I've got for you, and I'm going to be honest with you, son. It's everything I know. Then he walked out. Somewhere in Montana, there is a coffee can on a shop bench with 3 open envelopes in it, and 41 pages of an old man's handwriting are in a climate-controlled archive in Virginia, where 400 students a year are told exactly whose they are and exactly how long they sat in a garage. And in a classroom every 11 weeks, a woman who spent 8 months carrying batteries up a hill for men who never learned her name stands in front of 31 young Americans and tells them the truth. The shot was never the hard part. The hard part was that the answer was standing in the room the whole time holding somebody's coffee, and nobody asked. Ask.